Hello and welcome again to Conscious TV. I'm Iain McNay. And today we have two very interesting guests who just actually flew in last night from Melbourne in Australia, Kalyani and Lawry. And we're going to hear their story, which is a very interesting story. And we're also going to hear how they work with businessmen and they help bankers become present. We all have our views on bankers, so this is going to be quite something, I think. So let's kind of start at the beginning of your journey. So start with you, Pete. When did you first become aware that you were, say, different from other people and you had other interests and priorities and you felt a beginning of a spiritual journey emerge?
It's really hard to nail that because when you keep looking, it keeps receding back. But really, as a teenager, I was experimenting and attempting to think 4 inches above my head and focus on the tip of the nose, that sort of stuff. And I suppose the first time that I really shifted was I was in Bali in early 70s and got into Kundalini Yoga. And that just really took me into another place completely.
So explain briefly, because not everyone is going to know, what is Kundalini Yoga?
Well, this was a particular series of hatha yoga exercises focusing on the chakras, which is energy centers in the body. And it was very intense, very dramatic, and I sat on a beach for months doing that, and nothing was ever the same.
And how come you were in a situation you were able to go there and sit on the beach for a long time?
Well, I was courtesy of the Australian government, really. When you turned 20 at that stage, you were drafted into the army. So as an alternative, I went to Asia for a few years.
Is that right? You can do that? You can.
Well, no, you can't do that, but you just do it.
I see.
Yeah,
so you were avoiding.
I was a draft dodger for 3 years.
And, I understand. Yeah.
And that was a gift.
So obviously you had principles then, in terms of you didn't want to be in the army and you wanted to do something else with your life.
Of course not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And Kalyani, how was it with you? What was the triggers in you that started you in your search?
Possibly. When I was about 15, I was given a copy of the Tao Te Ching and the I Ching, and that opened up a whole world to me, a whole world of exploring and understanding and looking for what is termed the way. And it flowed from there. There was always a looking, reading what we would term spiritual books, exploring, beginning to do hatha yoga, learning hatha yoga, and the path as such, meditating, learning to meditate. And then Peter and I met when I was 19, so our journeys were bound then in that sense and continued the myriad of things that we've explored together, various teachers and so forth.
Okay, I think there was a time when you were walking barefoot in India, is that right? And you got very sick?
Oh yes, it's almost
what happened
essential. Well, I walked from Goa to Madras. It was 1970.
And how far is that?
A long way.
So what was the motivation behind that?
It was just, I was into the sadhu thing, you know, so it was just reading the Bhagavad Gita and walking, and it was very free time. And
so you walked on your own? Or
at one stage there was another Australian with me, and a lot of it I was by myself. Yeah.
And you walked barefoot?
Yes.
And did you carry food or anything? Or?
No, it's just, this is India. So it was wonderful. I'd bought a cheap map and there was no correlation between the dots and the names and the lines. So I quickly learned to just actually feel right or left at every corner. And it was just going with the flow of what was happening.
How long did the walk take you?
I think about 3 months.
So you were walking barefoot for 3 months along the dusty road, whatever, and people gave you food and shelter.
You get food, you get shelter. Sometimes you get lifts. It was just it was those times.
Okay, but you got quite sick, didn't you?
Of course. I ended up with hepatitis and elephantitis, and of course I got it in the testicles, which was fabulous. So,
gosh.
So I spent 3 months on my back with some missionaries who'd picked me up, which was just, and it was wonderful, wonderful gift that, because you know, when you're young, it's always about projecting, so you're never really there. You're always talking about the next place you're going to or the one you've just been. So it just turned 21, I was like decked, and I had to just lie down for 3 months, which was a wonderful experience, but quite exquisitely excruciating at the time. Yeah.
And they got you into reading the Bible, I think, didn't they?
Yes, they did, yes. Well,
Yeah.
you stay with missionaries, guess what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But didn't something go through your head questioning what you were doing? Here you were lying on your back, you had enlarged testicles, you hepatitis.
Mm. Oh, of course. Well, at the time I was really into Krishna, and I'd actually just got tattooed Krishna on my forearm. But nearly 40 years ago, Krishna was long and thin, and we've got faded and fat together as we grew.
Right.
So shortly after that, I got into Christianity.
Right. And how long did that phase last?
Oh, well, the phases never end, you know. They just appear and reappear. But I, of course, couldn't integrate it, and so I just went back into Asia. And that journey was several years in Asia. And when I came back to Australia, via the Kundalini Yoga, I met Kalyani, and we've only ever had one conversation ever since.
And the conversation is about
That,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Consciousness.
Consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then you travelled together.
Mm.
Yes, we did. We travelled back to Southeast Asia, and the point of the travelling was to visit monasteries, ashrams, and to learn, you know, to absorb as much as possible, and to virtually find the truth, because essentially that's what, if you're undergoing this journey on a so-called spiritual path, the perceived goal is the understanding, is the truth, the essence. So this took us to various places. In Java, we stayed for a few months at Wisma Subud, which is Pak Sabu's basis at that time. Tan Buddha Tut's monastery in southern Thailand, then across to India.
What did finding the truth mean to you at that time?
It was everything. It was about, you know, what's the meaning of it all? What's the point?
So something didn't add up in life. Somehow the values of contemporary society didn't quite connect with you, and you were looking for something deeper and more real. Am I
Yeah,
doing this correctly?
what's the essential core here? And it was funny in that I remember we had this thing where each day we looked for the greatest teacher we could find, which is a wonderful way to do your days. And at one point, the most amazing person around was Muhammad Ali. So we spent about a week with him in Kuala Lumpur, and that was just fabulous.
So you had personal contact
Oh yes,
with
we
him?
spent about a week with him. He was just wonderful.
So what was wonderful about him?
Well, he was just so here. And so we went to see the fight with Joe Bugner. And,
Really?
And that was just...
This is the Rumble in the Jungle one, was that
No,
right?
no, no. This was just after the Rumble in the Jungle.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then, of course, then Ali had sort of done rope-a-dope and stepped back. But this time he did the exact opposite and came full on. And the fight was over in seconds. But it was just such an extraordinary spectacle. And because I was a draft dodger, I got the job to work with him. You know.
You see, for me with Muhammad Ali, it was also about, and I had no personal contact with the guy, it was about taking what he had to the maximum. And that seems to be with all the great, well, not just sports people, but many other people who do well in the world. They take something, a talent they have, and they maximise it. They take it to the limit.
And he was just exquisite. He was completely here. And that's what attracted us to him.